Welcome back, guys. In this episode, Hakeem Jeffries, this has been a bad week for him. He melts down on CNBC after being fact-checked live, and Jasmine Crockett drops another embarrassing claim blaming Trump for lynchings in the South. Meanwhile, Democrats escalate their rhetoric, telling the U.S. military to defy Trump's orders, with Richard Ojeda and Mark Kelly openly sowing distrust among the commander towards the commander-in-chief. And as Dearborn erupts with Muslim-Christian clashes, as we will see later on during this live stream, shocking new reports reveal Somali immigrants in Minnesota stealing billions through fraudulent autism claims to funnel money overseas. Tonight, we're breaking down the chaos Democrats created and why it's all blowing up in their faces. Now, you can send your reactions in the chat as we break down these stories. I will do my best to read them all. And don't forget to smash the like button, subscribe, and share this video. Let's get started with the first story. Now, Hakeem Jeffries just had a meltdown live on CNBC after the host refused to let him do the usual running around and not answering questions and trying to deflect towards the Republicans and blame them for all the troubles the United States is facing. So we're going to go straight into that story right away.
To get done, you are going to need at least some Republicans to come over. Why not start with a one-year extension or potentially even a two-year extension?
Well, Leader Schumer offered a one-year extension in the context of trying to end the Trump Republican shutdown.
Yeah, that's different. What I'm talking about what you have now. Let's not go back to what's done in the past and what has not been extended. If you want to get something that has actually done, you need to do something that will have bipartisan.
You can ask me the question. You can ask me the question. I'll provide the answer.
Answer the question instead of
I'll
going
provide
back.
the answer. No. I'm providing an answer in order to provide context. Republicans have repeatedly refused to take yes for an answer. It was a very reasonable multi-year extension that was offered. It was a one-year straight extension plus a multi-year process through a bipartisan commission to more permanently resolve the Affordable Care Act issue. So having that context is absolutely important, regardless of what you may think.
It's important context to make me realize that I don't think you want to get a deal done. I think this is something where you'd like to see the rates go higher and allow the Republicans to hang themselves with that. Is that the answer?
That's absolutely
politics?
That's absolutely.
So I think Democrats aren't used to getting pushback when they go on these platforms or these news outlets to, just say whatever they like, and then they get glazed over by the anchor. So he's panicking, he's stumbling, and he's going to start attacking her soon.
A ridiculous assertion.
Here he goes.
Really,
3 years is not going to get passed, so what do you do?
Shame on you for saying that, because we're fighting. It's not a partisan issue for us. In fact, the states that are most impacted as it relates to an Affordable Care Act tax credit expiration are all Republican states. We're talking about West Virginia, Wyoming, Alaska, Mississippi, right? Tennessee. Over and over and over again, we can go through the list. That's why you probably have
some Republicans who would sign on if you guys could come up with something that actually looks like a bipartisan deal.
Yep.
Listen, this is not a partisan fight for us. It's a patriotic fight. We're fighting for every constituent, even if
I don't believe that.
Aren't necessarily fighting for their own constituents.
Do you?
We want to find a bipartisan path forward. And that is what we've repeatedly indicated we want to do. Like, we want to sit down and have a reasonable discussion, find common ground to address this issue. Now, Republicans said in the House they were willing to deal with the Affordable Care Act tax credit issue after the government funding agreement was reached. Well, now the government shutdown is over, and there's still been no conversations with House Republican leaders.
Mike Johnson never said that. The leader never said that. You do have Republicans, though, who would agree with you on something if it was actually bipartisan in nature. That's what I'm trying to get at.
Actually, Mike Johnson actually did say that there was always a plan to specifically deal with the expiration of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. In fact, he said that repeatedly. So I'm not sure what you're referencing. I think
their plan is something that looks more like an HCA, which I'm guessing you would say is dead on arrival, too. If you wanted to set up these health care plans that are funded instead of going through the ACA, I'm assuming you would say that's dead on arrival, too, because there have been Republicans who've put that forward. Am I wrong in thinking you would not go along with that?
What I'm saying is that what's in front of us is the immediate expiration of the Affordable Care Act tax credits. Republicans have had all year to deal with this issue, and they've refused to do it. So they're the ones who are not interested in finding a resolution to a health care crisis that they've created, including passing a bill that enacted the largest cut to Medicaid in American history. And because of their policies, hospitals, nursing homes, and community-based health centers are closing throughout America, including in rural parts of the country.
Hakeem Jeffries is slowly beginning to look like a one-trick pony. I've heard this argument so many times that I can almost, finish his sentences. All right, blaming the Republicans for the largest tax cut in healthcare, and hospitals and nursing homes and emergency rooms are closing all over the country. He's been saying that for a long time. Meanwhile, the cuts are very specific. People who are on Medicaid shouldn't be on Medicaid because they either should be able-bodied enough to work, and not be subsidized for their health care, or they should prove qualifications of some sort. It's a really easy thing to understand, but he continues to go down this simplistic, fiery narrative that actually isn't true.
Which is why it would be nice to see a one-year extension so that none of these things happen immediately and give you all time to actually try and work on bipartisan situations.
All right, so Hakeem Jeffries, walks into a buzzsaw during this interview. I think I'll just move my face above the notification there. And, he can't catch a break. He can't catch a break. But sometimes the mistakes that he makes are of his own doing. Here is Hakeem Jeffries saying that the cause of the unaffordability of housing is due to global warming. Okay, now I don't understand that statement. I don't know the quantum economics he's working into that statement, but let's hear him out.
Homeownership has become unaffordable in far too many places, ripping away the possibility of home ownership for millions of Americans. And we know that home ownership has always been central to the great American dream. And so it's incredibly important that we deal with the climate crisis, because there is only one Earth. There is no planet B. We have no other option. We have to deal with protecting God's green earth.
Okay, so I don't understand. Can someone explain to me in the chat the connection between affordability and home ownership? Affordability of home ownership and climate change or global warming. Okay, this is confusing to me. So Hakeem Jeffries, of course, in his own campaign team called him Brooklyn Barack, and we affectionately call him Walmart Obama on this channel. So let me know what you think of Hakeem Jeffries' arguments about, basically every time he goes on these networks, his plan is simply make Republicans look bad, make Trump look bad. And I've said repeatedly, yes, it's politics, but if there are people who voted you in to look after their welfare and to bring policies that would help them, fighting Republicans and fighting Trump isn't, in my opinion, the way to go. Jasmine Crockett, on the other hand, has been doing her part to uphold the Democrat Party. The Democrat Party, would be lost without Jasmine Crockett. Now, here she is doing her part to further the narrative of the Democrat Party, claiming that lynchings in Black communities, or that there have been lynchings in the South because of Trump. Now, I heard this, listened to it, and it just didn't make any sense.
They not even going, honestly, they're about to outlaw the idea of white supremacy and white hate. Like, they are about to be like, oh, that's not a thing. Forget the fact that you're talking about getting rid of like the classification for nooses in a time in which we have seen these random Black bodies be strung up down south. Also, seemingly at a time in which you're back in office, because what you do is you embolden the hate. You embolden everybody to take off their hoods. That is what he has done. He is the one that is producing this violence. Listen.
So she's blaming President Trump for lynchings of Black people in the South. And I did some fact checking, and it turns out that there have been no lynchings of Black people in the South since President Trump took office. So she's lying, and every opportunity she finds to squeeze in a Trump is a racist, Trump is the new leader of the KKK, you know, she just pigeonholes it in. And then when she gets caught, she pivots the story to make it look like she was misunderstood or that she didn't have the time to do her research. And it's our fault for not understanding that she didn't have the time to do her own research. You know, this is getting very entertaining. I mean, you should stop being outraged that they think you're stupid and start breaking out the popcorn or the red wine and just listening to these clowns performing and laugh, point and laugh. But when you're done pointing and laughing, please vote for the other guy on the conservative side who has common sense policies that cater to you know, your dreams for yourself and your family. Now, Jasmine Crockett has a history of lying. So we just saw her lying, claiming that President Trump caused the fictitious lynchings that are happening in the South. But she has a history of lying. And just to show you a practiced liar she is, here she is lying on one hand, claiming that the reason why she went into law was because she experienced some hate crimes when she was in college. All right. In 2019, she claimed that she was a victim of hate crime, but her story changes conveniently after she's in Congress. Just have a listen.
I had a great background as it relates to my ability to deal with numbers, and it was going to pay well. So I was like, I'll be an accountant. Unfortunately, around my junior year, I was the victim of a hate crime or two. And so were a group of my friends, all at the same time. Cars were keyed with the N-word. We received hate mail in our on-campus mailboxes. And at that time, my school hired the Cochran firm. And there was a lawyer who graduated from University of Houston who was assigned to me. And it was the first time in my life that I felt helpless. And I was like, I want to help people that are going through what I've just experienced. And at that point in time, I decided that I was going to sit for the LSAT.
Now that's a beautiful origin story. You know, is kind of story that you watch and it just reminds you of a superhero like Spider-Man who got bitten by a spider, or like the Incredible Hulk who got gamma radiation poisoning. She got poisoned by a hate crime, and she, you know, came out on the other side as a lawyer. But here she is telling the origin story differently.
I did Little Shop of Horrors. So when I was in college at Rhodes in Memphis, I ended up doing Little Shop of Horrors.
What part did you play in that?
I was one of the women that was singing.
Okay.
Yes, I was in the chorus.
Okay.
And so I ended up doing it, and the mock trial coach recruited me to do mock trial. And I was like, no. By this time, I decided I was going to be an accountant. Didn't want to do anesthesia no more. Still didn't want to talk to people. So then he goes, no, you should do mock trial. And I said, that's for the kids going to law school. Long story short, he recruits me. I do mock trial just my senior year. I become a national All-American. He says, you should go to law school. So I applied, got a full ride, and said, fine, if I don't like it, I'll quit.
So in 2019, she was a victim of hate crime. That was her origin story. In 2025, she was encouraged by someone who she saw as a wise mentor to sit for the LSAT and become a lawyer, and then she did that. So which is it? Okay, look, I'm trying to help you to kind of see that you shouldn't take these people seriously. And when I say don't take them seriously, I mean don't get emotional about the lies that they tell. These are political animals. They just want you to vote for them. They want to tell you the right thing to get you to support them, to get you outraged against the other side, and then to get you to turn on your family and friends in favor of their policies or their ideology. All right. So I'm just doing that. Not that you can, point at them and say, "Oh, I hate you." No, 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 no. Look, I don't hate Jasmine Crockett. All right. She's a beautiful black woman who has found her way into politics and has found her way into Congress, and she's doing well for herself. And she's surviving the best way she knows how, even if the best way she knows how is to tell loads of lies, convince everyone that she experienced some hate crimes when she was in college, and then conveniently changes the story when she's sitting in front of a different talk show host and so on. So that's fine. So don't hate these people. Just understand that this is all a game. It's all an act. All right. Now, while we're talking about acting, the House just voted 285 to 98 to denounce socialism and block it nationwide. I watched the press conference that President Trump and Mamdani held in the Oval Office, and I was waiting for the lightning bolts to start striking all over the room, because the fiery rhetoric that Mamdani was shooting out of his fingertips during the campaign, it felt like if he was in the same room with President Trump, he would jump across the Resolute desk and grab him by the neck and choke him out. But he stood beside President Trump like a dutiful son, smiling sheepishly and complimenting President Trump's policies and saying how alike, or how much in agreement they are about New York being taken care of. That was quite disappointing for a lot of people who tuned in, because they expected the UFC to take place in the Oval Office. Now, that being said, the House has voted to denounce socialism and block it nationwide. And I think some people are suggesting that another resolution should be voted on to also block Sharia law. We'll talk about the let's call it the incursion of Sharia in a certain city called Dearborn. We'll talk about it. And then, let me know your thoughts in the chat. Now, guess who voted no to denounce socialism during this vote? The majority were Democrats. They literally just admitted that they want communism in America. So while you're seeing all the shell games being played, the smiles, Mamdani's, standing dutifully beside Trump and everything is an act for them to get what they want. They want socialism in the United States. They want you to pay for it. They want you to support it. They'll tell you anything you want for you to help them achieve that goal, unless you're paying attention. Okay, so don't get upset. Don't get bent out of shape when you see these things. Understand what they want. Understand who they are. When they tell you who they are, believe them, and then vote accordingly. Vote the other guy. All right. Now, remember, send your comments in the chat, please. We're going to be having a conversation about these stories, at the end of my commentary on everything that we're watching. Right. Now, let's move on to the next story. Okay. Richard Ojeda is a guy running for Congress in North Carolina, and he tells U.S. military to defy orders. We covered this story last night and this afternoon. And you know what? It's a story that just isn't going away. Now we have someone in North Carolina, not one of the guys who did the video, telling the military to defy orders. And it seems like they are begging for the military to stage a coup. Let's watch.
What's up, everybody? Major retired Richard Ojeda here, and as a former leader who spent 24 years in service to this country, I think it's important to remind everyone that we teach our soldiers, sailors, airmen, Marines, Space Guardians, Coast Guardsmen, and members of our National Guard that if they are ever given an order that is unlawful, illegal, or immoral, it is their duty to refuse those orders. This isn't rocket science. We have a wannabe dictator in office that thinks that anyone who doesn't agree with his cruel and evil ways should somehow be prosecuted or sentenced to death. This is what happens when we elevate a criminal to the highest office in the land. Donald Trump is literally calling for the executions of elected officials because they are reminding our military that they have a choice to oppose cruelty. Our country deserves better than a wannabe dictator. Remember your oaths.
We covered the story already. We heard the video. We watched it several times. We know he's lying. We know the people who did the videos knew what they were doing. We know the plan. We know that they triggered a response from President Trump. Now they're capitalizing on that response. We know the game plan. And now we have more of them coming out of the woodwork saying the same thing. All right. Now, I've said before that this is going to get worse. They're going to continue to push this unless someone goes to jail for it. All of these people that have come up now, I put up a poll, and I just want you to just take a look at the poll and vote accordingly. Which of the stories we're covering seems the craziest to you? Okay, this is one of the crazies. Okay, now every time these people come out of the woodwork to talk, they start out with their credentials. Oh, I am so and so. I'm a former, I'm a veteran. I served the country for 20 years. They rattle off their credentials as if their credentials are permission to commit crimes or to do evil things or to lie. Okay, I am so and so. Believe me, bro. All right. Now, the same thing is going on with the New Hampshire Democrat Maggie Goddard. Okay. Oh, sorry. I forgot to talk about Mark Kelly. Mark Kelly, one of the guys who was on the video, all right, was being interviewed on MSNBC, and he couldn't provide one example of an illegal order that President Trump has given. They're just floating out this general idea that President Trump wants to do something illegal. We just know it. Our spidey senses are tingling. Let's have a listen.
Yeah.
They would be violating their oath if they followed illegal orders.
And I guess, Senator, members of the military, what is your advice to them if they come across something that seems confusing?
I think they need to talk to their leadership, talk to their commanding officer about it and tell your commanding officer why you think this may be illegal. There are lawyers within the military, the Judge Advocate General Corps. You can have a conversation, with somebody who understands the law. There's always the option of you review the UCMJ with your leadership and you explain to somebody why you think this may not be lawful.
All right.
Yeah.
So he's not essentially stating clearly what these illegal orders are. He's like, if you feel like this is illegal, feel free to talk to someone. Oh, jeez. Canary King, I see your chat. The previous guy, Ojeda, he's a nut job. Look, it's a difficult conversation to have. People can easily say that this is a free speech issue. It's not a free speech issue. The chain of command is not a place to have free speech arguments. If you're in the military, you honor the chain of command, else lives could be lost. Now, Maggie Goodlander struggles. Like, whenever you confront them and ask them to give an example, tell us exactly what unlawful orders have been given, they can't tell you. They they hope you kind of side with them. Like, there's this thing that's about to happen. We all know about it. I can't tell you, but that's what they're trying to do here. Let's have a listen.
Have you, Congresswoman, or any other of these Democratic members of Congress heard directly from members of the U.S. military or the broader national security community who believe they've been given unlawful orders?
Well,
she's blinking rapidly. Let's hear this fantastic truth she's about to tell.
You know, what I'd say is I have heard from service members, and I have heard from service members, and this is all a matter of public record. What we see is an uptick of concern from the men and women who are serving in uniform about the legality of orders that are being given. And
I'm sorry, did she answer the question? She says she's heard from people who are concerned about the legality of the orders. Did they say that those are illegal orders? And there's ChatGPT, for crying out loud. All right, like, you can Google it, or you can read up, or talk to your commanding officer, or talk to the JAG, okay? The JAG office on your base, and say, look, okay, so the Judge Advocate General office on the base. Go in there and say, okay, I'm concerned about the legality of these orders. All right? It's really very simple. These jokers want these young men and women in the armed forces to start second-guessing the chain of command. And if you're in a firefight, or if you're in a dangerous situation, and you're second-guessing the chain of command, it could get you killed. But you know what? When that happens, they would have moved on to something else, some other cushy arrangement with Boeing or something else, because these people don't care about the lives that they damage with their lies. They only care about winning the next election, right? So it's just crazy. Now, speaking of dangerous rhetoric that politicians put out there regularly, okay, there's yet another story of another person, Jonathan Thomas of North Carolina, who threatened to mass murder ICE or Border Patrol agents by saying that he would, shoot them all and turn them into Swiss cheese. Well, he just pled guilty for doing and saying all that. So we're going to have a listen to that report. But this just goes to show you that a lot of the rhetoric coming from the Democrat Party and from people who support the Democrat Party have consequences. There are consequences to all the rhetoric that they put out there. And it is unfortunate that there are people who just swallow everything up, go out there and attempt to ride on the instructions or the advice that they're giving you. And when it's time for you to pay the consequences or pay the price for those actions, these Democrats who say they've got your back are nowhere to be found. He just pled guilty for these crimes. Let's have a listen.
Affidavit details allegations the North Carolina native called the Charlotte-Mecklenburg Police Department last week, told officers he's a veteran, and then threatened to kill ICE agents and CNPD officers if immigration-related arrests continue. The document includes Thomas's alleged threat to come to Charlotte with body armor, ammunition, and night vision devices to kill law enforcement officers if he saw them making ICE arrests along Albemarle Road. He allegedly threatened to shoot them all if he saw any more arrests happen, and that he would Swiss cheese the officers. Investigators believe he was referencing the May 12th ICE arrests on Albemarle Road near a CMS campus.
Your call has been forwarded to an automatic voice message system.
I tried calling the number investigators say Thomas used to contact CNPD, but was sent to voicemail. The affidavit explains additional threats, including claims Thomas had explosives around his house, saying, "If you feel like getting a warrant for anything I've said today, I hope it's worth somebody's life." Thomas has said.
We continue to see stories like this turn up. People are getting mentally affected by the toxic nature of the narrative being pushed by left-leaning media and Democrat leadership. They call ICE the Gestapo, they are the Nazis, they They are snatching or kidnapping people off the streets. They are deporting American citizens. They are zip tying children. They are dragging men and women and children out of their beds naked at night and zip tying them naked on the asphalt in the middle of the night. These are the things that you hear from Democrat leadership making. And to be honest, look, I don't want you guys to hear these stories and think that these people are unhinged and evil people. They genuinely believe that ICE is doing something evil. If you sit all day and all you watch is TDSBC, ABC, and all the other left-leaning networks who hate Trump and his administration and all of his policies, they will tell you everything he's doing is evil and wrong. And you as an American with the American spirit will decide you want to defend the rights of these innocent people. So you can't blame people like this if they've been mind-controlled by a media that feeds them constant sludge that is misinformation, yet they tell you the other side is engaging in misinformation. So this is the kind of thing that we see playing out regularly, all right? And when the after effects of Democrat policies, which they are defending to the hilt, because this guy is trying to say, look, you can't deport these people. They are my neighbors. All right. Some of these neighbors come from other countries. They live in the United States, some of them legally, some of them illegally, but most of them don't have the welfare of the United States at heart. Now, there's a story that I came across this evening. All right, Somali immigrants in Minnesota have been fraudulently diagnosing their children with autism so that they can systematically steal billions of US taxpayer dollars through Medicaid and funnel it back to Somalia. All right, you think it's all a lie? All right, let's take a look at this read. Okay, now this is a post. Excuse me, this is a post on X. All right, Somalis in Minnesota fleeced billions from taxpayers with bogus autism claims. Sorry, let me make that bigger. With bogus autism claims and funneled the cash to Islamic terrorism in Somalia. Like you can't make this up. And this is a developing story. So whenever people jump up and say, well, Trump is taking away healthcare from Americans who need it, you see people who understand that there is a lot of room for waste, fraud, and abuse in Medicaid, and the Trump administration is trying to block these individuals from continuing to take advantage of the American taxpayer. And the Democrats say, no, stop it. You're stopping Americans from getting Medicaid. They've essentially, now here's the breakdown from what I've seen so far. Of course, there's more that will be revealed. All right. Medicaid autism claims so far in 2018, 3 million. Then all of a sudden, from 3 million, it jumped to $399 million in 2023. How does that happen? Right. So these are the kinds of questions that that people are asking. Okay, how is this happening? All right. Now, so the taxpayer essentially has been funding terrorism in Somalia. If all of this adds up, right? If all of this adds up, that's what the taxpayer has been doing. Now, we're going to change gears and we're going to go to Dearborn, Michigan. Right, but let's watch the report first on this story because you need a good video to actually see what's going on. And then we'll switch over to Dearborn, Michigan, because we have Somalis in Minnesota fleecing billions from taxpayers to send funds to fund Islamic terrorism in Somalia. And then you have a bunch of them in Dearborn doing a bunch of interesting stuff. We're going to just watch that. And this is the part where I'm really concerned. Okay, but let's watch this.
I'm investigative reporter Ryan Raish. We've been covering this autism fraud investigation, including the first federal charges that came down on Wednesday.
Oh, sorry. I need to switch to make the video larger. Sorry about that.
I'm investigative reporter Ryan Raish. We've been covering this autism fraud investigation, including the first federal charges that came down on Wednesday for one of the providers. Now we're talking about kickbacks. According to prosecutors, some families are getting involved in this fraud situation in the form of kickbacks. We created a hypothetical situation here. A family of 4, according to the feds, may be...
All right. I'm going to stop the video. I don't know if the music there is going to cause the video to be taken down, so I'm just going to leave it there. But you get the you get the gist. All right. Now let's skip on over to Dearborn, Michigan. Now, a bunch of Christians. I'm trying to frame this properly because there are a few things that happened with this story. Some of it I don't support. All right. And part of it is that a few Christian people who identify as Christians, because you know my position on being a Christian. If you call yourself a cultural Christian simply because you live in a Western country, that's fine. But you can't call yourself a real Christian, a disciple of Jesus, if you do some of the things that some of these people did. They went to Dearborn, Michigan. They grabbed the Quran. One of them started slapping the Quran with pork. It enraged the young men who saw it happening, and they attempted to attack him. This is after that incident, and here they are expressing what they think about these Christians who are there to let them know that the United States is their country.
I believe they're going to cancel the 6:30 City Hall meeting because everybody's chimping the fuck out. They're chimping the fuck out. I don't have bananas. Chill out. I don't have bananas. This is not America. This is an insurgency. They are taking over our country. They're taking over our country. They want us all dead. Let's go next.
Wow, what's happening right now? People are pushing. Wow. This is Dearborn, Michigan right now.
Yes, this is Dearborn, Michigan. Any racist is not welcome. No races here. If you can't be peaceful, but every race is welcome. If you're a racist, you're not welcome.
At all, we do not.
Every race is welcome. 1, 2, 3. Our president is a pedophile.
Yeah, very lovely people down there in Dearborn, Michigan. There are reports of how the Islamic call to prayer essentially can be heard, of course, at the times of prayer, and that is un-American. That is not an American way of life. Residents have complained, and the mayor has essentially said that they're not breaking any rules. Of course, he's a Muslim. They're not breaking any rules by having a call to prayer at 5 in the morning when people are trying to get some sleep. And there's a lot more to discuss, because apart from the fact that you have these people who are openly chanting Allahu Akbar, they're attacking people who attempt to proselytize or evangelize within the city. There are videos that cover that. They also are in control of the city council. So you come in there and complain. The police doesn't protect anyone who is being attacked by these people who are essentially Islamic fundamentalists. Let's call them that. So they've essentially begun to implement some form of Sharia law in Dearborn, and eventually they're planning to roll it out en masse. Now, why is that so bad, you might say? It's, people can choose to worship anyhow they like. Here's where the problem begins. When you have young Americans who grew up in America who say things like we're about to hear. Because when you have an invading force who happen to believe a certain way coming to attack your country, and then you need your young men to fight this invading force and kick them out, you need to be able to rely on the people you have in your country to do that. But here's what these young men say when they're asked if they will fight against another country that is essentially Muslim if they are attacked, or if America is attacked. Will they fight on America's side, or will they fight on the side of the enemies who are attempting to invade America? Here's what they said.
You have all these Islam men yelling Allah Akbar. I have a question for you guys. If America were to get in a war with a country like Iraq, who would you guys defend, America or Iraq?
We won't get in a war. That's not permissible for us. But at the same time,
who would you defend first?
We would support our brothers in Iraq. That's the only way.
So you wouldn't defend America?
We would not defend America.
But you're American.
But at the same time, listen. At the same time, America is our country because we were born here. But in our Islamic book, we're not allowed to fight with people that are against our religion. So we just take up the jail time.
So you would
That's
not.
what we do.
So you would not defend America.
I would go to jail instead of fighting for America.
And who would you defend if we were to go to war against a country like Iraq again, America or Iraq?
America.
And should that be a troublesome conflict of interest for somebody to be here in America that would rather support another nation like Iraq?
Anybody who supports another nation needs to live in that nation. This is a Christian nation. A lot of the Constitution is based off of the Bible. And how far the country has fallen.
So this is the problem that a lot of people have been predicting for years. You now have military age young men saying that if America were to be attacked by another country that happens to be Muslim, they would not fight for America. Essentially, they are telling you where their loyalties lie. The Bible tells us in the book of Jeremiah that we should pray for the peace of the country we live in. Now, I'm sure that most of these men were born in the United States, but because they grew up in largely Muslim communities, they are American citizens who have been raised under a different culture. This is where the danger is. And Muslims outbreed Americans by a lot. They do. Let me know in the chat if you have any concerns about what we're seeing. In 20 years, what would Michigan look like? What will the politics in the United States look like? We already have delegates like Ilhan Omar saying that she serves the advancement of Somalia as a U.S. congressperson. That's what she's there to defend the Somalian people. How can you have someone who is a congressperson and her loyalties are to Somalia? How can you have people who grew up in the United States and their loyalties are to a different country simply because those people happen to be a different religion? All right. There's a problem there, a huge problem. This is in my books, and I'll just say it very loosely. This is a social security issue, not social security, national security issue. So there's a lady who grew up in England, and she was interviewed. She's over here in Dearborn, and she's interviewed, and she's asked a few questions about how England, in fact, why her family left England, and she tells her story. Let's have a listen.
Is this reminiscent of anything that you've seen in London or in the UK?
Yeah, so I left the UK 10 years ago because I saw this taking over. Unfortunately, I don't believe that Islam is compatible with the West. And as much as they want to assimilate and respect the law of the land, their women are still covered. They still do not have as many rights as Western women. I don't feel safe in these communities if I was walking through there alone. I do feel safe in Poland. The problem is the governments, they don't stand up for the people of the country. So my family were in the UK for generations, and we felt abandoned by our government. We felt as if they were protecting the asylum seekers and the migrants over the citizens, the natural born citizens of the United Kingdom. And as Muslim immigration, Islamic immigration has increased in Europe and the UK, so has the crime rates, so has rapes, murders, molestation of children.
This is a math problem, guys. It's a math problem. When you have crime going up, when mass immigration goes up, it's a math problem. You know where the crime is coming from. You do. As an immigrant, I'm going to credentialize right now. Like I accuse the Democrats of credentializing. I'm going to credentialize. As an immigrant, okay, I feel like most immigrants left their countries. Most immigrants did that to come to the West to have a better life for them and their kids. They didn't come to transform the West into the countries they fled from. If we find any immigrant who wants to transform the West into the countries they fled from, they are incompatible and should be sent on their merry way. It's a very simple equation to run. But how hard is it for anyone to understand that? But, you know, with wokeness and with political correctness, the people who come into the country to destroy the country know that you wouldn't, you know, boot them out. So they take advantage of you. They just do whatever they like, expecting you to not kick them out. And when you attempt to kick them out, they use your principles against you to say, I thought you were compassionate. I thought your good book says that you should welcome the stranger. Well, if the stranger has plans to take over my country, kill my sons and enslave my daughters, and say that that is a tenet of their book, they are a danger and they need to be kicked out. That is not Christianity. That is insanity. All right.
It's very dangerous, and unfortunately, their cultures are vastly different to ours. We need to be extremely careful how we tread and integrate Islam into the West, if at all. But personally, I think that it's happening too fast and at such a huge number that we're unable to actually control it. And we should be able to control our countries. These are our countries, first and foremost. Brits founded America. They brought over Western values. They brought the Constitution. The UK doesn't even have the Constitution, unfortunately, at this point. They are governed by the Human Rights Act from the UN, but that does not protect free speech. So really, the only place in the world that Christians are protected and your free speech is protected is America. And that's why I say God bless the Constitution and God bless America. This is the best country in the world.
Yeah, it's really, well, when you have people who have experienced these transitions from, oh, we're trying to be nice to these immigrants, let's let them in, to where they begin to outbreed the local population, take over the running of local governments and local offices, and then become a political force in your country to the point where crime increases, cases of assault increase, and the police defends the assaulters. That's what goes on in the UK. It is very disturbing, and it needs to be, you know, addressed the right way. Now, some mistakes have already been made, and the United States has to begin to self-correct. A lot has to be said about integration. A lot has to be said about people who have refused to integrate and want to convert the United States into their countries of origin. That is not a good thing. It should not be supported. It should not be tolerated. All right, so let's dive into the chat. Right now, this is Friday, and we have okay. So let's look at Canary King. Thanks for jumping into the chat and posting this. Actually, that's wrong. The Constitution is not based on the Bible. In fact, the First Amendment explicitly spells out the right to freedom of religion and specifically forbids the government from picking a state religion, i.e. separation of church and state. Right. Now, I did say that I was going to kick off a course on the U.S. Constitution. And one of the things that I learned some years back, I saw a teaching on how the Constitution was formed, and when you frame it in the context of the founding fathers, okay, this article of the Constitution, the separation of church and state, was targeting the Anglican Church. Right? I'm telling you what I learned years ago. So when I'm done with the course, all right, I'm going to basically share some more things. So sometimes the context of what the Constitution was addressing needs to be understood. And that's why people talk about the spirit and the letter of the law. The Anglican Church was the Church of England, and taxpayer money was going towards funding the Anglican Church. And so most of the people who were part of the, let's call it a rebellion against British rule, were Presbyterians. And so they felt that they were funding a church that was essentially an outpost of the British Empire, and that was essentially a state religion. And in the minds of the settlers, or of the colonials at the time, when they said church, they were referring to any church body, Anglican, Presbyterian, Catholic. They were not thinking about Muslims. They were not. There was no mosque, in the area. Okay, there was no mosque. Now, I know that there will be Democrats. I heard Hillary Clinton saying, well, there were Muslims who were part of the founding of America. That is a blatant lie. There was none. Right? These were Christian men from Europe, and they came from three primary denominations. They had the Protestants, who were mostly Presbyterians. They had the Anglican Church, and then they had the Catholic Church. So these were the three key denominations that were available. Then, of course, at a later time, the Methodists joined, on the continent. So there are conversations that need to be had about how the Constitution applies. When it talks about religion, it wasn't even thinking about Islam or Buddhism at the time. Okay, this is the 1700s. There was no Islam, okay, to discuss. So we need to look at that. But I did say I'm going to take a course. I'm only reacting or responding to this comment with what I do know from what I've learned over the years, and we will dive into that after I complete my course. All right. And remember, you guys are supposed to hold me accountable to finish up the course. I need to go through the course and understand these things. When people hear separation of church and state, it's all well and good until you begin to break down the historicity of the argument and why it happened. And it wasn't just an issue of, okay, we're going to say separation of all churches and state. No, they had a particular church in mind. But then again, no church is a state church. So that essentially killed the idea of even the Presbyterian Church eventually becoming a state-funded church. It was almost like whoever is in charge of the government can decide, okay, it's my turn to fund my own church. So that was why that clause was implemented, so that it would not become a thing. All right. So let's move on. Yes, I know the comments are directed to the guy, on the video. I know. The lady from the UK, totally different situation. Should I take the bait and address her comments? Well, maybe. Actually, Brits were kicked out of America. We didn't like your empire and colonialism. Yeah. But, it's funny because the American people were actually mostly Brits. So it's funny saying, we kicked you guys out. Hey, these guys were your people. But it was the king's excessive taxation, trying to milk the colonies to pay the debts that the English crown had incurred during the wars against France and so on. So it got a bit much, and people began to feel the pinch, and they said, look, we need taxation with representation. And that became an insult, a slap on the face of the king, and he wanted to push back. And then they started fighting. They threw a bunch of crates of tea into the ocean, and thus started the Great War over tea getting chucked into the ocean. There's a lot of interesting stuff to think about when we look at. But back on topic. Okay. Should another group of people who are immigrants come in and attempt to change the societal structure of the race? All right. Should they try to change the societal structure of the race? All right, Canary King, I am not taking the bait tonight. All right, I'm not taking the bait tonight. I'm telling you what I have learned. All right, so whenever I say things, I try to say what I have learned, and it's not me. Okay, maybe I'm going to start couching my statements in "this is what I learned," so that it's not understood like I'm trying to push my understanding on anyone. But this is what I heard, this is what I've learned. And you've heard me off and on during different videos and live streams saying things about the Constitution. And at some point, especially like it was this situation with the with the Congress people advising soldiers and people in the armed forces to disregard illegal orders. And it's like, okay, we're getting into some murky waters, because if I stand up here and, okay, because I favor Trump and his administration, I start mouthing off that, oh, you guys are in the wrong, and I don't know what I'm talking about, I do a disservice to people who listen to me. And I know that there will be people who at some point will trust me so much, and they will believe that I've done the homework, and so I have to be very careful to say where I got the information from and whether this is fact. So I'm going to start being very careful to couch some of the statements in that frame, and that's what prompted me to say, okay, I need to take a course, an actual course on the Constitution. You went off on a painful tangent on separation of church and state, and you're misinformed. No, well, that's what look. I took another, that was like a 52-week course on church history. And part of the conversation while that course was going on was on the connection of the Presbyterians with the Constitution, how it was written, and the target of separation of church and state, and why that was being said. And it was taught by someone who had actually done, like, he's a lawyer who read all of the memoirs and stuff that basically spells that out. But like I said, I'm going to take a course. No, it's not about me not being well versed on it. I'm telling you what I heard about that specific part of the conversation. It's not me saying I'm not well versed. I've listened to that course multiple times, okay? Because I was learning about church history, but when it arrived at the colonials and how the Constitution was written, it intrigued me. So I'm going to take the course, and then we'll figure that out later. All right. Why the history lesson tangent? Because you mentioned separation of church and state. And whenever you mention the Constitution, people think that the Constitution just fell out of the brains of these people who were framing it. There was context to it, and history is very important to that context. So that's why I brought it up. All right. So that's why I brought it up. So it isn't me just trying to go on tangents, but just me doing my best to inform you adequately. Okay. I'm trying to be as respectful to you as I can. But then again, a time will come when we will be able to sit and actually kind of unpack these things properly. All right. It's just there's a limit to how much you can do or say in a 1 hour live stream. And there's a limit to what I can actually unpack even within a 5 hour live stream. There are some things that are just ongoing conversations. There are experts. You could be, so let me just put that on the screen. You couldn't be more wrong on the history. I'm not, look, you can say the source I got was wrong. What I'm gonna do, like I said, because I'm not going to try to say, no, it's not about what I don't know. Every one of us is not the originator of wisdom. We learned what we learned from a certain source. The history you believe you're referencing when you're saying I couldn't be more wrong about the history came from a source. All right. So the thing about these conversations is not to say you're wrong. So there, it's about, this is a different take. This is what I heard. And then we exchange notes and we say, okay, so which one is more plausible? And then we can even do a deeper dive to say, okay, here are the facts on this side. Here are the facts on this other side. Okay. I don't set out to misinform anyone, and I don't think anyone else goes about originally trying to misinform people unless they are just dastardly individuals who want to create problems. All right. At least get AI to give you guideposts. No, I'm not falling for that trap today. Again, I did AI one time and you know how that worked out. So we're going to skip this for today. We're going to skip this for today. And then like I said, let me wrap up my course on the US Constitution. All right. I'm going to get to that point. I'm going to do a deep dive. And then maybe if it comes up again, we're going to, but separation of church and state. Now, let me respectfully circle back to where this all began. All right. So that I can just say this. Okay. Christianity is not a state religion. It's not. Jefferson had his own brand of Christianity. He even wrote his own version of the Bible because he didn't agree with everything that he saw in the accepted canon. All right. No, I will look up Roger Williams. I will. Like I said, I am going to do the course. I'm going to go through the course. And then I will have an eye out for the separation of church and state clause and how it applies. All right. So, okay. So back to what I was saying. Christianity is not a state religion. Okay. The United States doesn't have a state religion. When people say that America is a Christian nation founded on Christian values, what they are referring to, even if they don't know that's what it's meant to refer to, is the fact that Christian people and other people who were influenced by Christian culture came together and from that framework wrote the Constitution. The Constitution and the democratic system of the United States, or the Republican system of governance of the United States, came from a marriage of what they learned from Greek history, Roman history, and some Hebrew history. Okay, the federal structure was gleaned from the federal structure that was seen in Old Testament Israel, where all of the tribes were individual and independent, but they came together under a king, Saul, to be united or unified in a federal system. So they kind of picked up on that and used that. Okay, so look, I am not talking out of my behind. I'm just saying, look, these are the things that I have learned. Okay, I also have teachers, and these are also professors who have said these things, and some of them are they've done their due diligence. Okay, so it's not me trying to twist things or say things that I'm thinking out of my, my head. All right, so separation of church and state, very specific. Okay, you need to understand the context of that conversation. I need to go and do the course so that when next we have this conversation, I can, have more structure for the argument, or let me say for the explanation, so that it's not as disjointed as I'm giving it right now. I think it's the way I'm giving it that is making it, appear to be me. I'm not doubling down. I'm not doubling down. It's Friday, Canarican. It's Friday. It's Friday. All right, guys. Thanks for hanging out. It's been great. For those of you on Kick and those of you on Twitch, thanks for hanging out. Those of you on Rumble and on the backup channel, thank you so much for hanging out. We'll be back next Monday to cover the developing stories. We've covered a few things today. We looked at Hakeem Jeffries. Hopefully, we won't have to rag on him next week. He might decide to focus on serving his constituents than creating more uncomfortable conversations with the press next week. But being the leader of the House Democrats, I think he can't escape it, and he will continue to give us some great sound bites that we can use for our reports. So we're going to be ending the live stream. Have a great weekend. All right. And until Monday, we're going to be back again Monday at 12 noon and 9 p.m. Eastern. If you've watched this long, thank you for staying with us, and consider subscribing, liking, and sharing the video. And support us by becoming a member or by leaving a donation with a super chat or a super thank if you're watching after the fact. Thank you so much for being a part of it. Canary King, thank you for participating in the chat as always, lively and keeping me on my toes as always. So thank you so much for all of that. We will be back again next week, and until then, God bless you and have a great weekend. Welcome to Headlines and History, live news reactions and your views. We're about to go live soon, so grab your spot and get ready for a sharp, balanced take on today's biggest news stories with a dash of historical insight. Stay tuned. Each week, we tackle the headlines that matter: politics, economics, global events with a balanced lens. We'll react live, tie today's stories to historical moments, and spotlight your views in the chat. From trade talks echoing the 1990s to crises recalling 2008, we're here to unpack it all. Your voice drives the show. Share your thoughts or historical parallels in the live chat, and we'll dive into the best ones. It's news, context, and community all in 1 hour. We're moments away from launching Headlines and History. Stick around for live reactions, historical nuggets, and your chance to chime in. Hit the notification bell, prep your comments, and let's make sense of the news together.